Hello, this is Dr. Muriel Rand from New Jersey City University, and this video is on children's writing development. The first stage, when children are first starting to learn to write, is called the pre-literate stage. And it starts with scribbles like this one, and they might not look very meaningful, but they're actually, they go from being sort of random movements of a child just trying out what he can do to more purposeful, controlled movements and shapes. And at some point, the child learns that his scribbles can symbolize other things. In this picture, you can see the first beginnings of a face. That blue circle in the middle is actually a face with eyes and a mouth. Many children, when they do their scribbles, also pretend to write so that their scribbles look like writing. We call this directional scribbles. So you can see on this page how they've done lines and go across the page. So you can see how much they've learned about writing already. That it has lines, it goes from left to right, that one line is on top of another, and that there are these sort of squiggly things that happen along the line. Here's another one. A directional scribble where the girl wrote those lines and then she scribbled on the lines, pretending to be writing. So this is the first step. This is kids learning what writing is all about and trying it out. Kids at this stage also start making letters or letter-like forms. Sometimes we call them letter-like forms or mock letters because they kind of look like letters, but they aren't really letters. So you can see in this picture how there are forms, and this little boy is trying very hard to write letters, but they're not quite standard letters yet. Here's another example. Some scribble writing with some mock letters in it. They're starting to look like letters. Here's another one. You can see there's a lot of writing on this drawing, and some of the letters we can recognize, like the CHE, which also happens to be the same as her first name. And then the other letters she's experimenting with basically what makes a letter. Here's another example. You can see some standard letters mixed with some mock letters. And then we move into the stage of emergent writing. Kids often will write strings of letters. They like, once they've learned some letters, they like to write down all the letters they know. And it's not at all unusual that the first letters they write are letters in their name. Here's ones done in different colors across the page. This girl created a little catalog from pictures and then wrote in the bottom of the pictures these groups of letters. They don't say anything yet. They're not intended to symbolize sounds at this point, but they do understand that letters go in a string, that they're grouped together, and they're starting to learn the letter forms. So you can see these are like real letters, but they don't yet symbolize sounds. Children will also label pictures that they've made, and that's a great way to get them to start writing. And they will also copy environmental print, so the words that they can find around their classroom. This teacher has name cards, so they often will copy name cards. Here's another one, he copied ticket. This was in dramatic play. Here's another little boy who's copying some of the cards that are in the writing center. This is being copied. If you notice, it's from The Very Hungry Caterpillar. She's copying some of the words. And then we move into the transitional writing stage. And at this stage, letters are starting to represent sounds. So they make that big jump and understand the alphabetic principle. So you can see on this slide, Titch carried a spacesuit to his room. Very typically, the first thing that children are able to do is to isolate the first sound, the first phoneme, and then choose a letter to represent that first phoneme. So you can see that one letter is representing the word. In this system, this is from the Tools of the Mind program, and the children are taught to draw a line for each word. So that's a way of teaching them to isolate words within a sentence. And then if they can hear any of the sounds in the word, they're going to write down one of the sounds that they hear on top of the lines. So they draw the lines first, then they try the words, and then the teacher wrote the rest of the words after the child started this. Here's another one. I'm going to play football, and you can see how they're using invented spelling. And you can also see how invented spelling requires phonemic awareness and phonics. It requires phonemic awareness because the child needs to be able to separate each sound in the word to be able to write it down. And then it requires phonics so that they know which sound goes with which letter. Here's another one. I will be happy when school is out. I like to play with my friends in the summer. That's lots of fun. And you can see they're making some reasonable substitutions like a Z for an S, because when we say that's, we actually do use a Z sound. It's because the spelling in English is quite irregular. So this is sort of the middle stage in invented spelling, where they are able to hear some of the sounds in the middle of the word. So again, they start with the beginning sound, and then they can hear some of the sounds in the middle of the word, and then they are able to hear some of the sounds at the end of the word as well. So this is a little bit more advanced. I like when the cow was on the moon. And you'll notice the U for the W sound. Think about a double U or U. Our lips make that sound. So sometimes kids use the name of the letter to kind of help them with sounds, and it doesn't always match the way we spell in English. But this is all reasonable and makes sense. They have a very good sense of both phonemic awareness and phonics here. And then we move into the fluent writing period, where students begin writing phrases. I play with my cat and see that she's using conventional spelling. These are simple words. Often when children move from invented spelling to conventional spelling, sometimes the complexity of what they write gets simpler. It's not as complex because they don't know how to write those words, and now all of a sudden they know that they're not spelling it correctly. So we want to encourage them to use invented spelling still for the words that they don't know. The simple sight words that they've been learning, they should be able to spell those. But the words here, you can see a child who's moved into the sentence writing phase. They've made that big leap from just writing a few words to writing sentences. And this student is using conventional spelling, conventional punctuation, and spacing well. There's one word misspelled, favorite, but that's okay because that's a difficult word that we wouldn't expect a student at this level to be able to spell correctly, but it's wonderful that he's still trying to use it. At this stage, we could introduce the 6 traits of writing. There are 6 aspects that makes good writing good writing. Only one of them is convention. So it's tempting at this stage to focus a lot on spelling correctly and punctuation and grammar. But you don't really want to do that because there's so much more to writing that kids need to learn. And if they're only focusing on conventions, they're not focusing on the rest of the things they need to learn. For example, the organization. How are they organizing their sentences? How are they organizing their ideas? Or voice. Are they writing with a sense that you can tell who the author is and that there's some personality to it and some emotion to it? Or are they getting their ideas down, and do they have enough ideas to write with? We'll use a lot of graphic organizers ahead of time so that we can get the ideas ready. But we want to make sure that the students are using their ideas well and thinking about their ideas a lot. And certainly thinking about word choice, that they don't just use the simplest words or kind of boring words, but they're using descriptive words and more sophisticated words. And that's why we can't focus too much on spelling. The spelling should only be their high frequency words that they've memorized, but harder, more sophisticated words, again, they can use invented spelling. And then finally, sentence fluency. We want to start teaching them the way to construct good sentences, that they are interesting, that they're not too long, and that they're not too short, and that they're varied, that the sentences don't all sound the same. So these are all the things that they need to be working on. So if we're only focusing on spelling and punctuation and grammar, then we're not giving the students an opportunity to also learn the other things that they need to be learning. So here are some writing strategies that we can use, especially with our youngest writers. A morning message is a great way to have them start writing so that they can come over and add to this or write on it. We can start to teach them some of the symbols and some of the letters and some of the writing conventions. Language experience charts are a wonderful way of getting young children to understand how writing works. This is based on the idea that what we say we can write down, and what we write down we can read. So we have an interesting experience. That's why it's called an experience chart. We ask the children, what did you see? What did you see when we took a walk around the block? What did you see when we walked to the park? And we write down what they saw so that they can see the writing process. It's a way of modeling writing in a sense, but with their words, so it's authentic. Then we can take the language experience stories, put them in a binder, and add them to our school library. And the kids usually love to sit and read some of the language experience stories because it's got their language in it. Here we see two kids that are looking at pictures from a field trip, or basically a walk around the block, and the teacher took pictures and added them to the language experience stories. Another good idea is journal writing. This is a preschool class, and these are their journals. You'll notice how the clips are in there so that the kids can easily get to the page they need. And again, look at the literacy standards. The standards say that the children will be using drawing, invented writing, dictation, a combination of those with support. So when we talk about writing, we're accepting all different aspects of the stages of writing that I just went over. Be sure to integrate writing as part of play themes. They can use signs or tickets or money or anything that they might need, they can write down. Here they're having a concert and they've got a sign about the concert. Again, they were selling tickets to the concert, and they had a booth where you could buy snacks and soda where they needed to write some signs. Here's the soda booth right there, the concession stand, and you can see the ticket that they were using. We can also play writing games with them. This was in the morning, and it was Brandon's turn to do this. So he put in the missing letter, and for math, he also put in the missing shape. Copying from books. Children do like copying. Copying is not the only, should not be the only kind of writing, because it's sort of a low level. If you think about Bloom's taxonomy, copying is at the lowest levels, but it's a good way to get them interested in words, interested in writing, and interested in letters. Writing on an overhead projector, a lot of fun. You might have an old overhead projector in the closet somewhere. Kids love that because it projects on the wall. Writing with pipe cleaners. This is a terrific idea in kindergarten and first grade, and children can do it with their book, or they can come up with their own letters and write their own messages. Writing with movable letters on a metal board and magnetic letters. This is a lot of fun. They can experiment with different words and different ways to express themselves. And then finally, sentence strips. These are long strips of paper that they can write on, so that it encourages them to move from just writing words, one word, to writing phrases. And they can do this in conjunction with books or in response to books. So all of these are ideas that you can use for stimulating writing and encouraging writing and getting children to develop. Now that you know the stages and you have some ideas, we'll get started with lesson planning.